Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph will begin Yud Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom at the 2 dots. B'yesh lo tzuras haPesach. If there's tzuras haPesach, aval pi sherochav me'eser ein tzorach l'mayit. So a Movi, the opening to the Movi, the entrance can't be wider than 10, but if there's a tzuras haPesach, there's frames, 2 mezuzahs, and a mashkav, then you don't have to minimize the opening. It'd be kosher even though it's wider than 10. So we see that a tzuras haPesach helps to minimize the width. And molding on top, even though the Movi has a limit on the height, but if there's molding on top, so that's a hecker for it, so it will therefore be able to makshir the Movi, even though it's higher than 20, if it has the molding, the malter. What happens if you have the reverse case? What happens if you have the reverse, where you have the tzuras haPesach? Will that minimize the height? And will a maltara, if you have, let's say, on the kaira, you have molding on the kaira, will that be able to serve to minimize the width? Tashma, let's bring it right to Sanya Mavi Shugavoya Mesri Mama. If a Mavi is higher than 20 amas, you have to lower the height. But if it has a tzuras haPesach, then you do not have to be mimayit. So we see clearly that a tzuras haPesach serves to be mimayit the height. So that issue now is resolved. But what about the amaltara berach b'mai? What about the amaltara on as far as the width is concerned? Tashma, let's bring a raya from the Bryce of the Sanya. Mavi shugavo me'esri mama yemait. A Movi that's higher than 20 has to be lowered. V'harochav me'eser yemait. And if it's wider than 10, it has to be narrow. V'yesh lo tzuras haPesach. If it has a tzuras haPesach and it's tzorach l'mayit, you don't have to minimize it. V'yesh lo amaltara and it's tzorach l'mayit. And if it has an amaltara, you also don't have to minimize it. My love. So when it's going on the amaltara and it says ein tzorach l'mayit, my love, a seifa, aren't we referring to the last case, the previous case, the seifa, which is talking about the width? This is lo yaresha. It's going on the resha, so you have no raya. Masel Rav Yehuda l'chia barav kamei derav. So he taught in front of a Rav. He taught the following: that if a Movi is wider than 10 and has a tzuras haPesach, ein tzorach l'mayit. You don't have to be minded because it has a tzuras haPesach. Amar le asnei tzorach l'mayit. I've said no. You have to teach that you have to be minded, because even though there's a tzuras haPesach, it's still not Mamayit 10. If you have an opening that's more than 10, it's considered a Pirza, not a Pesach, even with the tzuras haPesach. So he argues on that. So we can learn out the following. If you have a chotzer that has a majority of its entranceways and windows, ain't an iteres b'tzuras haPesach. So it's not niter b'tzuras haPesach. The openings and the windows are in effect a tzuras haPesach. It's not niter b'tzuras haPesach, and therefore, since you have more open area than closed area, then it's not considered. It's not niter, and therefore it's also my taima hoil v'yoser me'eser oiser b'movoi. Since we know that more than 10 asers b'movoi. And in a chotzer, we know that if it's porous, more open area, and more closed areas, oiser in a chotzer. Ma yoser me'eser oiser b'movoi. Ein a niter b'tzuras haPesach. You just taught that a tzuras haPesach does not help to minimize a Pesach that's more than 10. So therefore, if you have this chotzer that we're talking about, sheruba psachim v'chalaynas, now those are in effect tzuras haPesach. But if it's rubai, most of the majority of the area is psachim, open ways and windows, that means it has more open area than closed area. Now, just like in a Movi, you're saying that a Movi tzuras haPesach doesn't help to minimize the 10, the width of 10. And Paras Meruba al Amid is Oiser B'Chaser, just like Legavi, the psul of a Movi. where we say the psul of a mavi, where we say that it can't be more than 10. Tzuras HaPesach doesn't help in the psul of a chotzer that you can't have paretz more open area than closed area. Similarly, the Tzuras HaPesach won't help. We'll say it also, it's ain't a nit of a Tzuras HaPesach. Back to Gemara, no. I'll tell you that more than 10 in Asr in the Moway. Yes, it's true that a Tzuras HaPesach doesn't help, but Shekain lo yitatavay is possibly rois l'Ramer. According to Ramer, even though we're makel, where we're makel by possibly rois, but we're not makel if it's more than 10. Timer b'paras meruba la'aymed ha'oiser b'chotzer Shekain yitata etzel possibly rois l'Divrakol. Now I'll tell you, you're comparing the psul of a chotzer, the aymen meruba la'paretz. You're comparing it to the psul of a mavi, where the opening is more than 10. I'll show you that you can't compare them, because by the case of pasei birois, we are mekel, we have a kula, we're mekel in the case of pasei birois, legabe the kula, legabe the din rather of aymen meruba la'paretz, where according to Ramer, we are not mekel, legabe the din of a person more than 10. So again, the case of pasei birois that we learned was when you have the oiler regalim and they're coming to traveling, they have to draw water from the Rishus HaRabim. If you have the bore is in the middle of the Rishus HaRabim, they made these L-shaped enclosures, to enclose the area. Even though the mechitza does not stretch across, in each of the four corners you make these L-shaped enclosures. And even if the sum total of the open area is more than the closed area, even if the sum area of the open area is more than the closed area, it's still matter. But according to Rameir, no one open area can be more than 10 amas. So you see, legabe the din of aymen meruba al paretz, we are more mekel, because in the case of pasei birois, we're mekel in the case of pasei birois, legabe aymen meruba al paretz, but according to Rameir, we're not mekel as far as the din of rachel me'aser. So therefore, he says you cannot bring a riot from that. Let's bring a proof that you cannot, it's Tzuras HaPesach, to the Rav's din, that when it's rachel me'aser, when the opening is more than 10 Tzuras HaPesach, does not help. The walls that are, most of them are opening in chaloinus, it's mutter. It says that they're mutter, so long as so long as there's more closed area than open area. Frankly, we can't take this at face value. Sherubin salkandatech. If most of the area is psachim chaloinus, then by definition it's more open than closed. So how can it be so long as it's more closed than open? That's impossible. Ela ema, rather you must say sheriba behem psachim chaloinus, where there's an abundance. You made an abundance of chaloinus and psachim. It's permitted. It's still permitted as long as the sum total of the closed area is more than the open area. So therefore, what do we see? That even though you have psachim, even though you have chaloinus, now those by definition have Tzuras HaPesach. Nevertheless, we say that you can't have aymen meruba parts. So you see that the Tzuras HaPesach does not help the din of aymen meruba parts by a chotzer. So just like Rav said, it doesn't help by a movi, but we see by a chotzer that there's a din that it has to be more closed area than open area, and a Tzuras HaPesach will not serve to, in effect, close the open area. Omer Rav Kani says, not a raya. Kitanya hi bepischa shamoy. He said that's talking about a pischa shamoy. It's talking about where it's not a proper Tzuras HaPesach. It's a pischa shamoy. What does that mean? It's defective. My pischa shamoy, pligi bar Rav Rechumi v'Rav Yosef, charamar deles leishkafiv, charamar deles leitikram. One says that it has no side posts, and one says that it doesn't have a tikra. So it doesn't have any side posts. What does it mean? It has an opening, but it has an opening that was made that through it was broken open, and therefore you had an opening where, yes, there's a sides, but it was broken. So it's not a proper mezuzah side post. It's broken open, so it's jagged. It comes down on each side that it's jagged. So it's not a proper mezuzah two side posts like that. The other one says that it doesn't have a tikra, it doesn't have a lintel on top. It may have a roof line on top and might have a top of the roof or a lintel, but as far as the opening is concerned, it doesn't have a lintel. Rav Yechon also holds like Rav that a tzuras of Pesach will not serve to minimize an area, an opening more than 10. It will not be maksha then. The Amar Rabin Bar Rabba Amar Rav Yitzchak Ma'isem Bar Mechad Mibikas Beis Chorsan, a person from that place who knows Dal Kendusen Kundisen Ba'arba Peyas Besoda. He put 4 poles in 4 corners of the field, Umasach Zmoir Alem, and he stretched the vine across them. So he had a frame, 4 corners on each corner of the field. He had 4 corners. He put a vine, he stretched a vine across them. So he had this frame over here. And as far as kilayim, they said, and therefore it's considered to be like it's sectioned off. So therefore, outside these 4 corners, the area outside you can plant. So you can plant a different mian on the other side because this area is considered to be enclosed. It's considered to be a separate area. And they said, the Gabi Shabbos is considered to be enclosed in this area, and it's a Rishus HaYochid, and you can carry within this area. So the fact that you have the 4 posts and you have the vine stretched across it, it's considered like a tzuras of Pesach, and it encloses the area. It says it's only had to Legabi Kilayim, but Legabi Shabbos they were not makel to say that this is considered an enclosed area. So b'mayas kinan, what are we dealing with? What is the case over here? Where is this vine that's stretched across the poles? Ilema minatzad. If you'd say that it's minatzad, meaning you have a pole and the vine is not on top of the pole, it's tied around it and it's stretched from the middle to the middle, and it comes through the middle, not on top of the pole. So if that's the case over there, how can that be? That's not a tzuras of Pesach. V'amar Rav Chisda, tzuras of Pesach sha'asa minatzad lo yasu like klum. That's not considered a tzuras of Pesach. A tzuras of Pesach has to be on top, not that it's on the side of it. Ela al gavon, must be that it's talking on top of it. Uvamai. If the space between the area between the poles is 10, so Bahal Lemer Rav Yomi Shabbos Loy should hear Rav Yochanan say on Shabbos it's not valid. If it's only 10, not more than 10, how would he say that it's not kosher? It's certainly a kosher tzuras of Pesach. Elalabi Yeser Me'aser. It must be that it's more than 10. And you see Rav Yochanan says Legabi Shabbos more than 10, even though this is a tzuras of Pesach. It's not kosher. Where's this loy? No, it's not a riot. Lo oilam be'eser, I'll tell you it's 10. Tzuras of Pesach should not help if it's 10. Uminatzad, we're talking where it was not on top, it was around, on the side of the pole. Ubi Rav Chisda come ifli, and let's go for the machloikis. Do you say that that's a tzuras of Pesach? Or do you say no? Rav Yochanan says it's not a tzuras of Pesach because it's minatzad, not on top. But if it would be on top, it would be kosher. Now it's important to point out that even though the Gemara beforehand said, the Rav Yosef said that at tzuras of Pesach is not matir chaser where is porous meruba al aymed, but Zoktai says that that was based on a diuk which the Gemara slugged up. And Lamaisa, the Gemara is holding now that at tzuras of Pesach will be matir, even in a case where the Aymed is less than the porous is more than the Aymed, where the open space is more than the closed space, it still will be matir. The tzuras of Pesach will still be matir.